I have received a letter from the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta seeking to debate Understanding Order 389, some issues with Whānau Ora revealed in the report by the Controller and Auditor-General on Whānau Ora the first 4 years. The release of the report is a particular case of recent occurrence. As an Auditor-General's report, there is no ministerial responsibility for the report, though I do accept that it deals with matters involving ministerial responsibility. The House has in place a procedure to consider reports from officers of Parliament. They stand referred to select committees for consideration and report. Any such select committee report is set down for consideration as a member's order of the day. But this may take some time. Ultimately, a debate on the committee's report may provide an opportunity to consider the quality of the government's response. However, serious issues have been raised. While the release of an Auditor-General report will not always warrant an urgent debate, on this occasion I consider the need to maintain public confidence in programs such as Whānau Ora justifies the setting aside of the business of the House today. I call on the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta to move that the House take note of an urgent matter of public importance. Honourable Nanaia Mahuta.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and as you rightly note, this is a serious issue. When the Auditor-General sought to look at issues around how Whānau Ora had been funded and the implementation of the policy over the first 4 years, there were a number of things that were raised that I think the House deserves a response on. Right. So I'm very pleased that we're able to have this debate today. Mr Speaker, what is most concerning about the report is that the Auditor-General said of the appropriations made in the first 4 years, a significant amount went into administration, about 42 million, when it could have gone into frontline services. After all, when this policy was promoted by the Māori Party as a part of the coalition agreement with the national government, Whānau Ora was a flagship policy. It was there to ensure that those most in need would have an opportunity to have a different approach in the way in which services would be delivered to them. We heard numerous debates in this House about a policy that would change the way in which government departments responded to those in need. However, the Auditor-General report shows that those other ministries involved in the implementation of Whānau Ora, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Social Development, actually took a piecemeal approach to the way in which they participated in Whānau Ora. In fact, they didn't change their funding strategies. They still funded individuals rather than what was intended in the policy, a whānau-centred approach. The Auditor-General highlighted that. The other concern that we want to bring to the attention of the House was the role of Te Puni Kōkiri. Over the first 4 years of funding for Whānau Ora, what we find is numerous transfers and underspends. Except for 2010 and 2011, there were underspends in each and every year. And then the Auditor-General highlights that there were reasons for slow decision-making. Well, Mr Speaker, one might only assume that Te Puni Kōkiri didn't have its act together. Now, people listening to this debate shouldn't misunderstand the intent of our criticism in highlighting the issues in this report. We know out there in the communities there are a number of Whānau Ora providers who are doing some very good things. We understand that they are making the best of what they have and the challenges of the current funding environment. But they too would say, if you were visiting their organisation, that actually the whole policy has lacked clarity in its implementation. And if there was anything to highlight in the way in which the Auditor-General has gone about her task of investigating the effectiveness of Whānau Ora, it would be just that. She makes the point that actually it's very unclear as to what the objectives were in Whānau Ora. Yet we see that around about 7.2 million has been put aside for research to be able to assess the effectiveness of the implementation of Whānau Ora plans. Well, where is that research? The collection of ethnicity data which demonstrates that this funding was to go to all whānau, whoever they were. They may have collected the data, however, Te Puni Kōkiri hasn't published that in a way that you can measure outcomes. the Auditor-General speaks to those types of issues. Also, there's no demonstration of what the short-term gains have been in the first 4 years. Now, the whānau order provider collectives have had research conducted as well. Now, we're informed in the report, expect that sometime soon. Now, if you were going to continue into the second phase of the whānau order initiative as promoted by the Māori Party, which actually is about the role of the whānau order commissioning agencies, surely the research of the first 4 years would be useful in order to inform that process. In fact, we had the Prime Minister himself get up in the House and respond to questions from the Labour leader about what was happening in this space. Now, the Prime Minister himself pointed to these whānau order commissioning agencies. We have 3 of them. We have Te Pou Matakana, we have the Pacifica one, and then we have He Pūtahi down in the South Island. Now, what is of most interest, and I challenge other members in the House to stand up, there have been a numerous feedback to members on this side of the House that good whānau order providers have not been contacted at all by these commissioning agencies. Not at all. Yet $68 million have gone as an investment into some of these providers, and they haven't been contacted by the whānau order commissioning agencies. They're unclear about what the future funding landscape looks like. Mr. Speaker, this report highlights, I think, some of the real challenges about the effective implementation of whānau order, a policy that was conceived by the Māori Party, a part of a coalition deal, but actually not implemented very well. I'm sure that the Minister in his good conscience would want to respond to the issues that have been raised in the report. Indeed, our Select Committee consider that we are the best place to ask questions of this particular report and also seek answers from the Whānau Order Commissioning Agency about the way in which they intend to roll out their implementation plans and funding strategies for the second phase of whānau order. The learnings of this report show us that while innovation occurs in the service delivery area, it is not consistent throughout the whole country. That there is not a widespread buy-in from other government agencies who are key supports to the successful implementation of whānau order. I want to highlight something from the report. The Auditor-General said that whānau order was not consistently described, which makes it hard for us to describe it and hard for agencies to link results to objectives. Some results have not been adequately reported on. As a Member of Parliament responsible for the oversight of good spend of taxpayers' money, that would concern anybody. It certainly concerns me, and it certainly concerns the Labour Party, because this policy, as I say, was the flagship policy of the Māori Party. Who would have thought that such a policy with such high esteem would have unclear objectives that could not be measured by those government departments? And I think that is a fault of the government. That to me indicates that the government took a hands-off approach to the implementation of whānau order, even though some of its government ministers were intimately involved with the implementation, and an arm's-length approach to ministerial oversight and good implementation. We should be concerned. We should also be cautioned by the recommendation of the Auditor-General that says where innovation occurs, let's not stop it. However, let's have a robust debate about transparency and accountability for taxpayers' dollars that should be spent in the area it was designed for. Quite simply, Mr. Speaker, there was a number of areas in which the funds set aside for whānau order didn't go to the people who needed it most. This is a kick in the guts to providers who are doing very good work out in the region. This is a kick in the guts to those navigators who are in organisations working with a number of stakeholders at a community level, trying to get the types of outcomes for whānau so they're not going down the wrong path, so that they are able to build resilience and do things, get employment, get training, lift the aspirations of their whānau. This is a kick in the guts for those providers who will fight tooth and nail for every cent that they get and continue to argue that working with government agencies is so difficult when you have to jump through 3 hoops and give 50 reports through those three hoops. The integrated contracting environment to which the Auditor-General spoke to is a positive thing. However, there still needs to be improvements in that space if the government is serious about the new approach that is indicated in Whānau Order. Now, I note, Mr Speaker, that you said that there is no ministerial oversight on this particular report. However, as a policy which has potential, and if we're to take the inference from what the Auditor-General has indicated, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, the new contracting environment which would help facilitate whānau-centred outcomes will require integrated contracts. It will require innovation in this space and better coordination of the government sector. Now, if there's a true intent of the national government to support any positive part of this particular initiative, I hazard a guess that emphasis should be in this space. But let's not get away from the fact that, Minister, there are questions of your department that must be asked. I think that a cynic might say that all along the grand design of the Whānau Order initiative may well have been to get rid of Te Puni Kōkiri and let's just devolve funding straight to iwi. But I'm not that cynical. I'm sure that the Minister would want to maintain the judicious oversight of Te Puni Kōkiri and respond to some of the real challenges here. Why did it take so long for Te Puni Kōkiri to go through some of these arrangements, these plans of Whānau Order collectives and then devolve out funding? Why did so many transfers happen over 4 years? Why did Te Puni Kōkiri not make it a priority to report on the data gathered to give people assurance that funding was going to where it needed to be? There was a high emphasis on vulnerable families in a midpoint change in this particular policy. Why did the Minister not ask questions? Why did the Minister not ask questions when there was continual underspend of funding? I think that's a serious question because the vulnerabilities over the last 6 years have only increased, not decreased. And here is a perfect pool of funding that could have supported many whānau in need. Why did the Minister not have proper oversight in this area? Mr Speaker, it's really important to ensure that as conscientious members of this House, we utilise the Auditor-General's report as an opportunity to hold the government to account, to hold the Minister to account, to hold his department to account in ways that ensure that policies that are designed to help the most vulnerable, to change the processes to ensure that providers are supported, that we can get funds out there to support them. You know, that's right, absolutely unbelievable. 1/3 of the funding set aside for Whānau Order going on admin, unclear objectives, unable to be measured and reported on, a landscape out there of providers who are unsure about what the future holds, setting up whānau commissioning agencies, and we're all not entirely sure about what their future accountability structures look like, what the implementation plans for the next phase of Whānau Order will look like. These are all serious questions that must be responded to. The Auditor-General, I think, has done whānau a very great service because she has supported the needs of a different approach to ensure whānau who need good wraparound services, an environment where there is better collaboration so that they can change their lives. She's actually supported that. She's done us a great service. She's ensured that we as a parliament hold the government to account on the implementation of a policy. It's clear that the Minister's department has been woeful in many areas, and it's evident that in the second phase of funding, and here's one little question, in the second phase of funding, can we expect in Budget 2015 an increase in funding for Whānau Order commissioning agencies to implement the second phase? And will the Minister respond to some of the issues identified in the report prior to transferring funding to the whānau commissioning agencies? All valid questions, all as a result of the Officer of the Auditor-General's report. I'm pleased to be able to have an urgent debate to highlight those issues and assure those providers out there that Labor is on their side. We know you're doing good work, but we must make sure the government is accountable for a policy that has actually fallen short of expectation. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Very good speech.